Mere minutes before I sat down to shoot this video, we took down the Christmas tree and packed it away for another year, which means that officially now in this house, 2015 is over and done, and we are well into 2016, which I hope, as I'm sure you all do, will be a wonderful year, will be an improvement on the year we just got through. The year in review articles that I've read for 2015, and in fact the year in review video that I did on 2015, 5 Stupid Things About 2015, focused very much on the negative, and that's understandable because there was a lot of negative stuff that happened in 2015, but I have this optimistic streak in me. I have this glass half full mentality that bubbles to the surface from time to time, and this video is going to be an expression of that, because now that I have done a video about 5 of the bad things about 2015, I would like to take a few minutes here and extol the virtues of 2015, because even though I am not going to try to argue that it was a splendid year all around, it was not without its good points. So this video will be naming off a few of those good points from 2015. And I'm going to start with myself. And I would encourage you guys who are watching, if you are among those who looks back at 2015 and thinks of it as being kind of a shitty year, I'm going to share with you some nice things that happened to me in 2015. And I don't do this to brag or to toot my own horn, but rather to encourage the rest of you to try and do that for yourselves. Think back on the year that you had in 2015. And even if it was kind of a shitty year, even if it was a year that you are glad it's over and you didn't feel as though you had a lot of good from 2015, maybe there are a few episodes that you can look back on and think, actually, at that moment, it wasn't that bad of a year. For me personally, and I feel kind of bad saying this because, again, for many people, 2015 was a really shitty year. But for me personally, if I just consider my own selfish interests and I examine my life as though it were existing in a vacuum, 2015 was a pretty damn good year for me, especially in terms of this YouTube channel. In February, I surpassed 50,000 subscribers for the first time, which was huge, which is something that I never expected would ever happen when I started this channel. And thank you guys for subscribing. I passed first 10 million total views and then 11 million total views. Again, numbers that would have boggled my mind 5 years ago or so when I started this YouTube channel. And again, thank you guys so much for supporting this channel and for taking an interest in my work. I also accomplished a goal that I sort of set for myself very privately, that I never told anybody about except my wife and a few other close friends. I was a guest on Seth Andrews' Thinking Atheist podcast, and not once but twice. And the second time was kind of a nice surprise. I was a guest first earlier in the year. Seth invited me on the Thinking Atheist podcast to talk about Christian apologists and kind of the more out there, nutty, off-the-wall apologetics, and we had a good time talking about sort of weird Christian apologists and Christian preachers and such on his show, and that was just, I can't even tell you how much of a thrill that was for me, because I have been a fan and an admirer of Seth for as long as I've known of his work, since before he told anybody his name, when it was just The Thinking Atheist, and he was doing animated videos on YouTube and stuff, and to be on his show, to be his co-host for that first show that we did together was just, I can't even tell you how cool that was and how grateful I am to Seth for that. So Seth, if you're watching, I know I've told you this a bunch of times already. I've groveled at your feet in gratitude, but that was so cool. That was so cool. And then later on in the year, in September, I attended my first atheist conference, which I did because it was a regional conference that took place only about an hour from my house. Me and my friends Doc and Sean went to the Pennsylvania Atheist Secular Conference in Harrisburg, aka PastaCon. And that was a great time. And there, not only did I get to meet Seth Andrews in person, but I also got to meet Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty, and I got to see Muhammad Syed give a talk, and I got to see Mandisa Thomas give a talk, and Sarah Moorhead, and Richard Carrier, and it was just phenomenal. It was just such a fantastic event and a fantastic experience. And I got to be interviewed by Seth Andrews again, this time in person on camera, and he put up that video last month on his channel. I think early December is when it went up. And again, that was a thrill because I think that video turned out great. And I was so just honored to be a part of that. And that video was also then used for another episode of Seth's podcast. So I got to be on his podcast twice. And again, it's so cool. So cool to have Matt Dillahunty just walk up to you and start chatting with you. To just be able to sit on a couch in a hotel lobby and talk about Star Trek with Matt Dillahunty. Do you have any idea how cool that is? Or to have fucking Aaron Ra, come up to you and say, hey, we should take a picture? That's fucking crazy. Or to meet Lalandra Ra, who is one of my favorite people in the world, and to be able to sit down and talk with Lalandra for a good long while about stuff that we care about, and to take a selfie with her, and to take a picture with Aaron. And I mean, it was just fantastic. It was just such a great time, and it was a wonderful experience, and memories that I will just cherish forever, and hopefully not the last time that I'll do something like that. And in addition to that, I got to collaborate on YouTube throughout the year with some of my favorite people. I got to do a couple of collaborative videos with Christy Winters, who I adore, who's one of my favorite people, and also someone who I just respect just as much as I can respect anybody. I love Christy. I got to do a couple of collaborative videos with Stephanie Gatormson, including 2 videos I'm really, really proud of on trans issues. She sat in for me. I invited her to sort of take over as host for 5 Stupid Things about gender transitioning. That was awesome. It's one of the best videos I think I've ever done, and I had probably the least directly to do with it of any other 5 Stupid Things video I've ever done, and it turned out terrific because Steph is just awesome. And we did some Q&A videos together and some other fun things, and we're going to do things in the future as well. We have an idea, a kernel of an idea for a new YouTube series that we're going to do together once I reach a particular milestone in my Patreon campaign. But yeah, working with her was terrific, and getting to hang out with her, not just to do videos, but just getting to just get to know her and hang out with her was just awesome. One of the highlights of my year. And I got to meet Richard Dawkins, which I didn't really tell you guys about because it wasn't a big deal. I was invited by Steph through her capacity as the operations director of the Dawkins Foundation to do some videography for the Dawkins Foundation when Richard was in town in October, I believe it was. He was in the country for his book tour, and I got to spend an afternoon at the office shooting video and recording audio with Richard Dawkins, and it was really cool. And it's an experience I never thought I would have, and it was kind of surreal, but also kind of reassuring to be in the presence of arguably the most famous atheist on the planet. And someone with whom I have had disagreements, very strenuous disagreements, although we didn't talk about any of that because I was there to work. I wasn't there to debate the guy or to get into arguments with him. But he could not have been lovelier. He could not have been more polite and more on and more ready to go and more professional when we were shooting stuff. And it was just, a fantastic experience, an experience that I never thought that I would ever have. And that was part of 2015 for me. And on the large scale, it wasn't just a good year for me. There were good things that happened that benefited all of us in 2015. Let's not forget that the NASA Dawn spacecraft completed the first ever flyby of a dwarf planet, Ceres. And that was not the only good news from NASA, because in July there was also the long-awaited and absolutely spectacular close approach of Pluto by the New Horizons spacecraft, where we got to see for the first time ever close-up, gorgeous, high-resolution images of Pluto, of the surface of Pluto, of the moons of Pluto. It was a space nerd's dream, and that's exactly what it was for me, to see those pictures of Pluto, which are still trickling out. The great part about that New Horizons mission is it took so many pictures and collected so much data that the NASA scientists in charge of that project are going to be sifting through that treasure trove of images and data for years. And it's just spectacular. Pluto, the unknown planet, the lonely little dwarf planet off at the edge of the solar system, is finally a real place to us. It's finally someplace that we can point to an image of it and say, that's Pluto. And it's not some fuzzy, grainy disk against a black backdrop. It's a real physical object with dimension and detail, and it's just incredible. Just incredible. And back down on Earth, there was some good news as well. Here in the United States, our Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. Coast to coast, border to border, shore to shore. Same-sex marriage is now legal in the United States of America. And in addition to that, in Ireland became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage by popular vote, which, again, huge deal. Major sign of progress. Wonderful, wonderful news. This was also the year when the United States and Cuba reestablished diplomatic relations for the first time in over 50 years. Huge deal. Who would have thought a few years ago that diplomatic relations between the United States and Cuba, after an embargo and a complete lack of formal diplomatic relations between our two countries for so many decades, that diplomatic relations would be reestablished in the year 2015, and yet that is what happened. It was a good year in many ways. It was a bad year in many ways that I've already talked about in other videos, that other people have talked about extensively in the recent days as we look back on the year that was. But it's worth remembering the good things too. And there are more good things than those that I've mentioned. Honestly, most of the things that I just said to you, you can see I have the Wikipedia article for 2015 open behind me on the screen. Some of it comes from there. Some of it comes from just stuff I remembered off the top of my head. Way more good stuff than the things that I have mentioned in this video. So it wasn't all bad. And I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna. I'm not trying to say that because there were good things that we shouldn't be concerned about the bad things. We should be concerned about the bad things. We should be concerned about police brutality and racial justice. We should be concerned about equality for trans people and the continued fight for equality for lesbians and gay people. We should still be fighting as hard as ever for women's rights, for gender equality, to close the wage gap, to protect access to abortion and other women's health care measures. These are not fights that we should allow ourselves to ignore. And 2015 furnished us many, many reasons why we should continue to fight those fights, why those are issues that are still vitally important here in the United States and all around the world. Religious tolerance, income inequality, humanitarian aid, the Syrian refugee crisis, the crisis of immigrants coming across our southern border in the United States, the importance to live up to our values as democratic nations with commitments to humanitarian causes, with commitments to being havens for people who need help, who need asylum, who need escape from awful violence and oppression in their homelands. These are things that we were strongly reminded of in 2015, the importance of these things, and we can't forget them. And I'm not saying by pointing out the good things in 2015, I am certainly not trying to say that we shouldn't be concerned about all of those other things. We should be. And we should be especially mindful of ways in which we can take those negatives and turn them into positives. Use it to generate momentum to help create a force for change. And hopefully we can continue to do that in 2016. I really hope that we can. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough. I thank you guys. As I said before, I thank you so much for the support you showed me in 2015. I am so grateful that I have you to depend on in 2016, and I can't thank you enough for being there for me and for enjoying my work, because that's really the number one thing. You're not just hanging out here because I'm such a nice fucking guy. For some reason, you find some value in the videos I make and in the work I do, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and how much that means to me. So thank you guys. I hope that you had, at least sometimes, you had a pretty good 2015, and I hope you have an even better 2016. And I will be right there with you all the way. Thanks for watching. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, share it, subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.